Hey, welcome back to this Abroad Life. Today, I'll be the one running the show and I will be asking the questions. You'll be giving me the answers. Of course, I'll still share my own perspectives on life experiences if I have to at any point. So, the topic we want to discuss today is the misconceptions, or let me say the myths around settling down abroad. So if you back home in Nigeria, Ghana, all over, even in Asia, and you're coming to the United States, there are a lot of misconceptions, and they might be different for different people, and their expectations, things that you had to probably unlearn when you got here, especially around. I want us to focus around coming here, settling down as regards to maybe housing, getting a job, and having that financial stability and everything around that. So what would you say was like the greatest shock for you, and that turned out to be a myth? And while you were back in Nigeria, you knew this is what you thought, or this is what you learned from people, but when you got here, you just found out that nah, this is not. This is a myth. Definitely not true.
Right. Um, I think for me, I had I would say a very interesting experience coming to the US for the first time. Um, I, I I still remember that flight vividly. It was sometimes in August, and I was flying from the UK. I was flying from Birmingham to the US, and prior to that, what my friends had told me was like, see, it's really going to be tough. Like, there will be there's a lot of guns shootings in the US. People might not really welcome you. Really, you're not familiar with their environment. Um, I was a bit apprehensive, but again, I just needed to do what I have to do, right? So, but to your question, the biggest shocker for me was um, that friendliness, like that hospitality. Like it was not just all my fears just diffused because I saw like people were really willing to help. Like it wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be, right? So the first one was at the point of entry. I got into Chicago Airport. It's a very massive airport. I actually thought London Airport was big, but that was like super massive, right? I saw like the immigration at Chicago were even like were gisting, like they
Friendly,
wanted to
well,
know
that.
like, hey, where are you coming from? It was more like, it
So
was
did you
fun.
come in with anything like food materials, or you just came
So
with your
so for
clothes?
me, I didn't come with a lot of food because
Oh, okay.
I was just testing my I was just like trying for the first time. Like so for me it was more than like a litmus test. I
So it
came
was
alone.
just coming to land and
Yeah, I just came with like one bag. Like I think I had two
okay.
bags. Interestingly, I couldn't find one of my bags on time. But I mean, I traveled light. And
Yeah.
it was warm. In terms of interaction, it was cold. Like talking about the weather,
Yeah, I mean it's Chicago,
but
right? So
I mean, it was like a friendly atmosphere. Like people were willing to talk to me, like to find my way around the airport. So that was the first shocker to me.
for me,
Yeah.
the experience was kind of different, and that's because I was coming directly from Nigeria. I brought I brought along a lot
Oh
of
my
food
God.
items,
You
right?
packed all
So
the egusi and the
exactly, all those momo, all those fried dried beef, and they took everything.
yeah,
They took
wow.
everything at the customs. I mean, they just pulled us aside. I was like, okay, like
Wow.
something don't happen. Oh, what did I pack? And they started asking questions. What is this? And like, means no, you can't bring any. I mean, I was like, why didn't I research this before even traveling down to the US?
Yeah.
I mean, these are the things that you would normally research, like what shouldn't I bring
Mm.
along to this
Yeah.
country?
Yeah.
What do they accept? And
Yeah.
I mean, thankfully, they were just food items, not things that will have landed me in trouble. And
Yeah.
so they just seized those items and
Mm-hmm.
let us go. Even though it
Yeah.
was painful because those were things I had to pay a lot of money to buy later
Yeah,
on.
I think that I mean the lesson from here is like just for viewers out there, like if you're traveling somewhere for the first time, especially if it's a long distance, you're traveling
Yeah.
to another country, don't try to be over smart by packing a lot of food. Like, come on, like I know most of you are afraid, like, hey, what will I eat? Like,
Oh, I'll be
but I
there.
think it's smart not to. I mean, there are there are new ways of doing things now. Like you will get those foods, you will get those
But they are
items.
more expensive. That's the
You
thing. That's
know,
why
but
people try to
again,
bring them
is it
from
not
home.
better you don't forfeit those items than to actually right?
Yeah, but I've seen people get away with like
Right?
I've seen people come into the country and they were able to bring in their
Mhm.
pomo, their
Yeah,
because it was so bad that they even seized like seasoning that have beef flavoring because they
interesting.
have beef as part of the ingredient. They
Yeah,
seized those also. So I thought like,
interesting.
are these guys overreaching? Are they
You know, the
doing
interesting thing I made is that some of those items shouldn't have left Muritala Mohammed
media part,
International
right?
Airport
But it
or first
but
system. Some of them,
yeah, but
like
different countries might have different rules for these things. So, I mean,
different.
from the originating airport, they will probably not want to like
To
it. I mean, I
interfere.
know things that are flammable, like palm oil, for example, they took it out right from
Yeah.
Rita Mohammed Airport. Like
Yeah, it's
anything
true.
that is fire hazard, they took those things out right from Nigeria. So it was when I got to the US, I had issues with things like beef. I
Yeah.
mean, so I learned a lot in there.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean that's interesting. Like I mean that
So
was
moving on from the airport,
yeah.
like I said again, maybe it was just my lucky day. People were willing to help, right? Because I was going to get on a connecting flight to Madison. Like, it's just like a 45 minutes flight. And because for the first time I opted for air travel because it was night, it was for the first time. Then I landed there. Then I already connected with the Nigerian community in Madison. So I was able to like on
Like
WhatsApp
within your school or just
like within my
random.
school, like
Okay.
within my school. So and I think that another lesson to learn from like if you're also traveling somewhere for the first time, try to make some connections, build a network. Like this might not be people that you really know, but at least try to join a community of people in that city or in that environment or in that school. That will help. Like most times they are always enthusiastic to just help. The interesting thing was that I never had accommodation when I moved. Like I really did not have a place of my own, right? But
So you're
school was
just
really
going and
I
hoping
was
for
just,
the vibes and
you know,
inshallah.
and that was why I said I was just testing the waters, right? Like I was just like, okay, it's like I'm just doing a trial run. So I connected with someone. I'm like, hey guys, I'm in town. I just landed in Chicago. My flight to Madison will be in an hour plus or so. And they're like, oh sure. Once you land in Madison, like your final destination, someone should pick you. Like someone opted to pick me, right? Then from there we're like, okay. Then we're like, I need to get a place to stay. So I was able to use that Nigerian connection, like that African connect really worked for me, right? So they got me to somewhere like I think it was a PhD student, like he's been around for some time, like just stay for a while because it's really difficult, it's challenging to get accommodation. I think we cannot overemphasize that
Oh
because
yeah, it's
yeah,
challenging.
it's not really like the way we get accommodation in Nigeria, right? You know, like they want your rent and your housing record, they want to get your social security and all
Exactly.
of that. So it makes it a bit tricky, and you
And
don't have all
they
those
want
things.
to be I mean they want to be able to trace you to somewhere like
Absolutely,
somewhere
yeah,
you are associated with like an institution like a
yeah,
school or employer like something like
mhm,
that and you're new you don't have all of those and so it's
yeah,
challenging to
yeah.
find somewhere.
So,
I mean, I think for me, talking about the friend, people being friendly that you spoke
mhm,
about. So by the time I got, my connecting flight was from Philadelphia to Raleigh
that's right.
in North
Okay,
Carolina. So when I got to North Carolina, I was out of battery then. So I had to speak to one of the airport
oh
security
my
guys,
God,
like one African American man, elderly man,
okay,
and he was just all willing to help, gave me his
yeah,
phone, dialed the number for me. I
nice,
spoke to someone on the phone, then he directed me somewhere to charge my phone. Then I charged. I was able to use his phone to book like he
Uber.
actually did that for us. He called it taxi for us.
Oh,
So
okay,
maybe because he didn't ask me like where he from or something. Maybe he
yes,
says like this guy is probably he's definitely from Africa, not probably. So he called the
interesting,
Nigerian man
yeah,
for me. The taxi driver was a Nigerian man, and the man didn't collect a penny from me, even though that it's a long distance. It was when I settled down and I
mhm,
started taking Uber rides from the airport
interesting,
to my destination. I knew, oh, this man did me a lot of favor. And when he dropped us off, he gave me like $100, like, oh, big guy, just
interesting.
welcome. But he also gave a lot of unsolicited
It
advice
was a
that
lucky day anyway.
that
Sounds
I
like
thought
very
like,
lucky day.
this is not for me. Like, I don't want, I don't want to be
Yeah.
hearing all of these. Like, thanks, I appreciate them, but not for me. So
Oh,
yeah, people were very friendly, and
nice.
yeah,
So, I mean, moving on from there, I think aside the friendliness and the fact that people are not so hard as we just assume, like, one thing we must also talk about, like, from my own experience, is that individualism. I don't know if that's a right phrase or the right word to use now. Like, there's this thing about you have to figure out things by yourself. You need to figure out your own shit, right? And this is what I mean. You have to be a friend to your Google Map, right? Because after that first day, man, guy, you do on your own. You have
yeah,
to
oh
find your way
my,
around things, right? So you
yeah,
must have data on your phone. You must make sure your phone
yeah,
is on. Use a good phone.
yeah.
Like, put the location of where you're going there, because you can't start asking people. You can't keep asking people, please, I'm going to every time. They just be like,
I
guy.
mean, it's like
So I think that
you
was
have a
also another
working
experience.
smartphone, right? And you
Yeah.
have a map. So why are you
Yeah.
asking
Yeah.
everyone around? Yeah. I mean, sometimes, I mean, getting used to
Mm-hmm.
some of the roads for me. I remember I got lost one point, even with
Mm-hmm.
having Google Map. So the
Yeah.
Google Map kept telling me some things. I mean, there are some phrases that I started learning from Google Map when I got here, like, oh, slide left instead of turn left. I mean,
Yep.
I don't think there were a lot of roads back in Nigeria where the phrase was slide left, and
Yeah.
that's because they're still very kind of parallel to the main road,
Mm-hmm.
but it kind of branch off the main
Yeah.
road. They're not really like a turn, so it's like slide left. So I was
Yeah.
just like, slide left, like, what does that? So started learning the lingo from the map, like, so it's
Mm-hmm.
a bit different. I mean, yeah, yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. So aside that friendliness, what about things like I mean, I spoke about food earlier.
Yeah.
So, but for me, food was important.
Mm-hmm.
But what about things like rent?
Mm-hmm.
Because it was shocking for me to realize
Yeah.
how much it costs to pay rent.
Yeah.
How much rent costs in the
Yeah.
US, even though I was in Chapel Hill, which, I mean, by all standards, it's not like a city, it's not like a big city, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I was still paying a lot of money towards rent,
Yep.
everything you have
Every.
to pay
Yeah.
for. Unlike back in Nigeria, that, I mean, people have
Yeah.
ways around
Mm-hmm.
things, and but yeah, you pay for everything.
Yeah. So, if I can come here, I think you mentioned food. If I can quickly talk about food, like one of
Mm.
the things you quickly want to do once you um get to a new country, try to find out good spots where you can get food, whether fresh food or whether, like, you need that,
But the
right?
groceries, right?
Groceries. You need to get to know those ones that are closer to you. And interestingly, they are always around the corner, like not so far from you. Like,
And when
if
you
you
say
live,
that, do you mean like African grocery or
yeah,
just the
I
general
mean,
one?
the African grocery. But again, you should also know, like, you might not have the luxury of getting African groceries everywhere.
I mean, it
So
might be
the
far
general
from you
ones
and
should
also
not be far from
expensive.
you, right? So the general ones like Walmart, Woodman's, Target, like, get to know those locations on time. So that when you start triangulating your life, like, you go to school or you go to your workplace, you come home, you go to grocery. Like, you need to perfect that triangle first, like the
Yeah.
first 1 or 2 weeks before you start expanding, that to your base. So that's just that about that. But talking about rent, like, the way I see is really interesting. Like, one of the shift that has to happen to you, like paying rent monthly, like you said, like the rent is huge, then you are paying monthly.
Monthly.
So you're coming from a place where you pay once in a year and you're like, hey, I'm done for the year. Let's see how
Exactly.
things range. Now it's coming every month. And it's not only coming every month, they will alert you a few days to the end of the month, like, hey, be ready to pay. And there are consequences of you not paying.
Oh yeah, I mean,
So those
there are
are things you need to
consequences. You
adjust
can't
to.
just say I'm not
Mhm.
paying this month,
Yeah,
and yeah,
yeah.
nah.
Yeah,
And the
you're not going
landlord
to
will
be
start
able to
chasing
say,
you.
yeah, landlord, I need to have this conversation. But, things are not really, there's really no way to have that conversation,
I mean,
right?
I
So,
think I think it depends on the location and the kind of agreement you have. For those of us that are renting from property management companies,
yeah,
it's very structured, and
yeah,
there's really no way around not paying
yeah.
rent. But I've seen posts on Reddit where people say they are owing rent for 3 4 months, and that's because they are renting from the landlords directly. So
Okay.
that way they are able to go behind on
Go
rent. I mean,
behind, yeah.
that's possible, but that's not the norm. That's
Mm-hmm.
like the exception in this part of the world. So, I mean, I get what you are saying, and we're talking about busting the myth. So
Yeah.
one thing that I don't know whether this is true for you, but one thing that a lot of people used to think back at least back in Nigeria is they'll think like they do the mental math in their head and think like, oh, this person earns maybe $25 an hour. So they do the math like, oh, this person, if this person earns that kind of money, that's like maybe that's $200 for 8 hours a day, right? So that's like $200. Then they extrapolate, they keep doing that, like, oh, this is a lot of money a month, and they just feel like this person must have a lot of money.
Mm.
But now we just spoke about rent, how much you'll have to pay for
Absolutely.
rent, your
Yeah.
utilities, water, sewer,
Mm-hmm.
garbage, internet, like electricity, everything. By the time you pay all those things,
Mm-hmm.
like you practically have nothing left for most people. Like they usually
Yeah.
don't have a lot of money left. So that's a myth. That because then I used to think like, I mean, at least for me, I don't want to speak for a lot of people, but
Yeah.
I would think like, oh, this person, they go online and say that this person works at, say, Google, for example, and you look at it, oh, this person is a product manager or a senior product manager, oh, they must be earning this kind of money. But then you forget to think about where they work. They're probably in Mountain View in
Mm.
California paying
Yeah.
crazy
Yeah.
amount of
Bills.
money on
Mm-hmm.
rent, bills, and utilities, and at the end, not really having a lot left for them. So
Yeah.
that's another thing for me. I don't know whether it's true
Yeah.
for you.
Yeah. It is. I mean, if you look at the statistics, generally, I think like 30 to 40%, if not 50, of an average person's income goes into bills, right? I
Yeah,
mean, just rent alone, save like much more,
yeah,
right? Then you not even talk about insurance. One thing, like,
yeah.
just like sticking to the topic, is you just figure out that you need to take care of your insurance. Like, it's compulsory. You need to take care of your health insurance, rental insurance. Those things just come at you,
Car
and it adds
insurance.
to your bill,
Yeah,
right? And those things keeps you working. Like, even if you don't want to make money for yourself, you need to make money to take care of those
at
bills,
least.
right?
So
Right?
yeah,
So that's also another mind shift. Like, coming back from Nigeria, coming from Africa, like, you might not have that mindset. Like, you might get away with a lot of those things. But once you get there, you start realizing, like, hey, these things are important. You have to take care of some of those things. So yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, I have something in mind right now that another
Mm.
myth, but I'll let you go if you have anything else
Okay.
around the myth about coming to the US and settling down and learning the ways
Yeah.
here. Mm.
Yeah. Go for it. If
Okay,
if
so
anything comes to my mind, I'll give it a go.
yeah, I mean, there's also it's easy to think like people are living great life here. I mean, it's not like they are suffering really, but we don't. Sometimes we associate that life because of the way the society is structured that you have to pay for the essentials. So if you're forced, kind of not forced really, but if you pay for the essentials, you live a decent life.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so when people here are posting pictures on the internet, so on social media, so you think they've really hit it big and they are making they are making a lot of money. So until maybe when you reach out to them for help, or you reach out to them
Not
for
telling you
any form, so
stories.
that's when they start telling you story. I know the story of a person, I'm not going to mention the name. So when he needed a co-signer for a student loan, because I mean this person is like an uncle to him,
Okay.
and he reached out, and you know what this what this person told him, like that he should just decline the admission and forget about it. Like,
Wow.
I mean, now I understand not having the money and saying I don't
Mm-hmm.
have, but don't come from the angle of, oh, you don't want to take a lot of student loan, you'll be
Mm-hmm.
stuck with it forever, this, that. So
Yeah.
the best advice I can give you is to decline the admission and not take, like,
Mm.
that's what the person told him. Well, this person, I mean, found other ways and he's here
Yeah.
now, like working in one of the fangs and
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
enjoying his life. So, yeah, so like looking at him when he was back in Nigeria, looking at him, his kids,
Mm-hmm.
like what they post on social media, I thought like, oh, they were really, really living it. But you could just be living like a even below average life here, and it appears as though you've made
Mhm.
it and you are really living large. So
Yeah.
that's also another.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
One thing that just pops up in my mind as we're talking is also the transport system. Like, I mean, and this is debatable, right? Like for me, I feel like it's super easy getting a car in the US, especially
Oh yeah, it's easy. Now these days when I mean, and
it's
that's what I'm talking about. When people post things on social media, you think they are living like. Now
yeah,
when I'm driving, I see somebody driving a Range Rover
yeah,
beside me. It doesn't come to my head like, oh, this person is rich. In Nigeria, people mostly pay cash
mm-hmm.
when they're buying assets, right? Or they're buying
Yeah,
anything, they pay cash. So if you see somebody driving Range Rover, Sports, Evo, whatever on the road in Nigeria, you think like, wow, this person is in money, is wealthy, or at
yeah,
least they have the money to buy it. But
yeah,
here, you could just walk into a dealership or even
yeah,
and they'll give you that car as long maybe
yeah,
even as a student, I got offered cars that they were priced for like 50K, 60K,
mm-hmm.
and I kept wondering in my head, why would they do
Yeah.
this, right? But as long as you keep paying for it, they don't care. And so, yeah, I agree
Exactly.
with you. It's
Yeah,
easier
I mean,
to,
the way I was even looking at it, like, I mean, to your point, which is the point I was trying to make to like anybody can get a car. Like
yeah,
that's how the social system works. But it's really interesting. Like anybody can get any kind of car. Like take
yeah,
for instance, even with $500, $1,000, like that, two
yeah.
thousand.
And just say you
You
want to pay for 10 years.
you can say
And
there's something for everybody,
yeah,
right? And that's one thing again that is really super interesting, different from what it takes to buy a car now in Ghana or in Nigeria. Like you need to like cut a
you
tooth,
get all the money.
like
Yeah,
cut
you have
someone's
to,
head. You need to you need to you need to like break an arm, right? To be able to get that kind of thing. Looks like you have to be up there to be able to do that. It's really not so, right? So that was also one thing clearly that you see.
yeah.
Also,
So,
the same thing, acquiring properties, setting up
housing,
businesses,
exactly. Yeah,
right, is also
yeah,
really not as hard. Like we can set up a business right now. Just in this conversation, we could just register an
yeah.
LLC, get a business. We can even get funding if you
You
have
can
a
do
good,
that in Nigeria too now. Yeah.
right? Really,
I
really.
mean, I heard you can register business online now in
Oh,
Nigeria,
okay,
so yeah,
cool.
that's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, because you look at it this way. I was watching one. There's one. I think the guy is in the UK. I can't really
Mhm.
recall his name now. That he has this funny podcast where he talks about how Nigerian, especially the Yoruba movies, make it
Mhm.
look easy going abroad and making it in like 6 months. Like then they come
Yeah.
back like, oh mommy, I'm back. I'm building you a house here and everything. Because what you see is you see somebody travel to the US and they're saying, oh, they're a student, and in 6 months they'll be like, oh, they bought a car, a brand new car in 6 months. But a lot of people
They didn't buy the
back in
car.
Nigeria don't know that they probably just paid 2K down payment,
Absolutely.
3K, and they're paying like $400 or $300 every month
Yeah.
towards that car. The same thing, they'll be like, oh, 2 years, they already bought a house of
Hmm.
700K. But the thing is, they don't have the 700K. They didn't just
Absolutely.
transfer 700K to the realtors.
Yeah.
So that's another thing that a lot of people
Yeah.
don't
One thing
understand.
just came to my mind now, if I can just interject
Yeah,
again, like going back to schooling, if I can just switch gears, like the schooling itself, it's really quite different. Like there's a whole lot of paradigm shift.
yeah.
The school
Well,
environment,
yeah.
like the lecture modes, what happened in class, the approach between the professors and the students.
Homework,
It's
everything.
really a different ballgame. And one thing that I think is important to call out, like from my own personal experience, is the fact that the system wants to support you. Like nobody is really looking out to
For
fail
you
you.
to feel, yeah.
Like, that's not the point.
Yeah,
That's not the idea. So it took me a while to like transition that mindset. Like,
yeah.
hey, this system is not trying to fail me. This system is not trying to like, hey, want to figure out whether you are good or bad or something.
Yeah, that was a huge mind shift for
Yeah,
me
the
too.
system was trying to help me. The
Yeah,
system is the system already acknowledged the fact that you are a great guy, right? They are just trying to like get the best out of me, and they are just out there hailing me, like
even
cheering
if you're
me on.
not performing as a student, like there are a lot of programs in place to try to get you to that level.
Mm-hmm.
Not like I mean, the contrast is, I mean, we went to the same school back in
Yeah.
Nigeria, right? The same university. Like,
Mm-hmm.
there were professors that set out the first day of class. They're going to tell you, like, every year more than half fail this class, so be careful.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
how is that even? How is that a sane thing to say
Yeah.
to tell your student, like,
Mm-hmm.
be careful, like, because you fail this class? Like, when I was in school, even though this is like an extreme case, I know someone that didn't submit an assignment for a semester. The professor kept reaching out up to the middle of the following
Yeah.
semester, asking, because it's a final
Question.
pro, it's kind of like a final project,
Yeah.
and it had a lot of marks related to
Yeah.
it. So we're expecting, can you still submit this? You still get 70% of the score if you submit now. You still get,
Mm.
until the guy decided not to submit and then just failed him on that project, and he still passed the class.
Interesting.
That's
Yeah.
the crazy thing, because you keep having this incremental homework. You're getting
Mm-hmm.
5 point, 10 points. Even if you miss the exam, you're probably still somewhere close to the
Mm-hmm.
middle of the bell curve, especially where bell curves are used. And you're still somewhere close to the middle of the bell curve, so you are not at the bottom. So, like, in a there are classes where I had like 96, 97,
Mm.
and I didn't get a high.
Yeah.
I was not at the top,
Yeah.
right? I didn't get an A because
There are a lot
other
of
people score
legitimate
like
reasons.
100, 100, 100, 100. And there were courses
Mm.
where I scored like 78, and I was part of the top, and I got A. So
Yeah.
it was, I don't know whether it's the same across all schools
That
in the
makes sense. I
US,
think
but
the point you are making, which will bring me to the next thing I wanted to highlight is inclusivity, that diversity, equity, and inclusion in the academic environment and generally too. Maybe not everywhere, because you observe that physically challenged individuals are well catered for.
oh yeah,
Like I remember when I was a project assistant, for a grant project when I was in school, working with a professor, for a project and all of that. I mean, I had friends that were teaching assistant, right? So what I saw was that even when students miss exam, if that student is able to say,
yeah,
"Hey, I am physically challenged," or "I had one issue or the
yeah,
other," there's a lot of windows. There's a lot
yeah,
of, I don't call it loopholes,
yeah.
but
No,
again,
they are
it's
not
just to say,
loopholes,
yeah,
because they, like, people have real lives, right? They have their
absolutely,
lives, other things happen in their life. It's not just school.
yeah,
So things do happen. I remember I had to miss an exam, and because of some personal life issues
yeah,
that happened, and I reached out to the professor.
yeah,
I was like, oh yeah, you can take it maybe before Friday, and don't worry, you don't have to come, you don't have to show up. So I kind of, I've missed final presentations, and they'll just be like, oh, when you have time, just record a 10 minutes video of your own and send it to
mhm,
me.
yeah,
That will take care of that. But that flexibility is there.
yeah,
If you I missed exams back when I was in Nigeria because I was sick, and
mm,
I didn't retake the exam. I failed that course. I was literally sick. There was evidence
mm,
like that I was sick. And there was one that I took somebody sick to the hospital. Two, I couldn't get it, and we're stuck outside in the hospital, couldn't make
mm,
it back until the morning of the exam. So the exam was already on before I got there. They delayed me for another 1 hour before letting me start the exam. So I
yeah,
only had like 30 minutes or 1 hour or so to write the exam. And I barely passed that because I scored
mm,
that in the test already. So I
yeah,
barely passed. So there were, yeah, I mean, there are so many things to discuss, and I don't think we can cover everything.
yeah,
So
yeah.
we're almost at the 30 minutes mark, and this has been
Okay.
quite fun for me. I thought it was just me, but yeah, so it wasn't just me.
Yeah, I mean, we could go
So
on and on. I could talk about mental
yeah,
health, support, right? Because
yeah,
it's something that we take for granted.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. I
like
mean,
there are a lot of opportunities. The system is really supportive.
supportive,
Mental
yeah.
health issues and all of that. Maybe we'll find some more time next
Oh,
week.
definitely. There has to be a follow-up discussion on this,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
yeah, we have to do a
yeah,
follow-up
yeah,
conversation on this. Yeah, it's been fun for me. I
yeah,
mean, I hope you've the viewers
yeah.
watching.
It is.
I hope they've enjoyed it also. So if you have any comments, drop in the comment section. Let's see what you
Mhm.
think. Are you in the US also? Coming from other parts of the world? What has been your experience? Is it similar to everything that we've discussed, or is it a bit different for you, or are we just sitting in our silo thinking everything? Yeah, I mean everything we've
Yeah.
experienced. We are not projecting it on everyone. So let's know what your experience has been. If you are back home, like in maybe Africa, in Asia, and you have this misconception, share and let us know whether we've done we've done you some good by highlighting some of these myths to you. So until next time, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your friends.
Cool.
We'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye.